Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, the podcast. And this week, we're reviewing The Big Short.
What kind of oxymoron named this movie, huh? Huh?
Welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up, featuring two guys getting defaulted and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And this week we have a very special guest
That we
on
do.
our podcast, our good friend, the tall, the beautiful Kevin Pettijohn.
Oh, hello! Wait, that was racist. Oh, I'm sorry.
DJ Kevy
Hi.
Kev
DJ Kevin Kev.
in the mix.
Kev does some stuff on the interwebs.
He does.
A fellow podcaster.
Should I talk about that now?
Yes.
If you want to plug that, yeah.
I
And then
don't
you'll
plug it.
plug it again before we sign off too.
Yes,
You'll plug it, Kevin, and you'll like it.
Hey, fingers.
I love that term.
I'm Kev, and I have a silly show that I do with my brother. It's called Bill and Kev's Excellent Tubular Adventure. It's on YouTube right now, and that's about it. We just talk about nothing. It's pretty fantastic.
We were trying to get Bill here, but eventually we're gonna get Bill on this podcast,
Yeah.
and we're gonna talk about. We'll talk about what we talk about. It's a surprise, but for right now, Kevin, he's not a real man. He don't drink beer. He don't put his hands in the soil to grow from the ground. He drinks liqueur. No, just liquor.
I can't drink liqueur. That's too fancy
Yeah,
for me.
it's. But Kevin, do you want to tell us why you picked this drink
Yeah.
and what it is?
Well, this week we're drinking one of my favorites, Crown Royal and Coke. And I thought it would be appropriate while watching a bunch of rich people run around with money to drink some fancy-ass alcohol that comes in a velvet bag.
Sounds perfect. Actually,
Does it come in a velvet bag?
Yeah.
it does come in a velvet bag. Crown Royale, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's why it's so expensive.
I feel like we should have like imported Coke or something more important.
Well, we just decided we're gonna see this movie like hours ago. So this is like 4 movies down the line. We're like,
Well, what's playing here? What's playing here?
we ran through like 4 different movies before we landed on The Big Short.
Oh, you guys saw that?
Yes, we were.
I thought we were doing Alvin and the Chipmunks.
Boys in the hood.
Boys in the hood. Boys
Road
on
chip.
the hood.
Boys
Yeah.
on the hood. Road chip.
Yeah. So, Mike, if you wanna throw us that plot description that we so
Yeah, the movie
graciously lifted from IMDb.
Thanks, IMDb. The Big Short is about 4 outsiders in the world of high finance who predicted the credit and housing bubble collapse of the mid-2000s and decide to take on the big banks for their lack of foresight and greed.
Wow. And that was, like we just said, we went through a few movies. We decided on this. We all have a sense that it's going to have some sort of Oscar presence.
I mean, I didn't when we looked at the trailer because
Right.
literally, like, I think it's one of the worst trailers of all time.
It's a very bad
Definitely
trailer.
the worst trailer of 2015.
I think
Yeah.
we all looked at it and we're like, oh, man.
Yeah, this looks rough. Like, I think the thing that just sticks out in the trailer is Ryan Gosling's wig. And just how horrible it looks.
I even see that in the trailer. But we all just got back from, we all saw it together at the theater, so it's very fresh on our mind, which sometimes hinders and helps the podcast. I don't know why I went into that, but I'm just going to jump right into, I feel like I always have something to say right after the introduction. But I like to do this, and I was talking to them like as we walked out of the theater. It's directed by Adam McKay. Adam McKay has directed a handful of SNL episodes: Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. I hate these fucking colons. Step Brothers, The Other Guys, and Anchorman 2, The Legend Continues. Now,
So pretty much anything Will Ferrell was involved in.
Now, studies have said, like, that artists tend to do their best work, during emotionally trying times. Like, art comes from a dark place. We can all agree on that, right? So I think this especially rings true for McKay, just because he got out of a 15-year relationship. Pretty big breakup with Will Ferrell.
I'll show her. I'll make The Big Short.
I was insinuating that him and Will Ferrell were gay, and that joke kind of just fucking blew up. It didn't blow up; it fucking crashed and sizzled out.
Short is.
It was
very big, but
It defaulted.
Well, there's no Will Ferrell for the first time. Will Ferrell's the
This is literally the first movie he's done without Will Ferrell?
yes,
Literally the first. Wow.
every other movie. Will Ferrell is like the protagonist.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. But this is, I mean, I don't know. I guess hats off for stepping away from that kind of like sure thing. Like he could have directed those until he died, literally. But he's definitely stepped into a more like sober arena. This whole like Wall Street culture of subprime mortgages and credit default swaps, like that's very different from like the comedy world
absolutely.
that he was just in. So the
I mean, there is comedy in the movie, and I think maybe that's where he felt he could, step into those shoes, is with the comedic role of it. But
oh, definitely, yeah, and that's what I kept saying. It was like an exuberant comedy. It's like he's kind of, I don't want to say it's completely original like what they did, but it's different.
it's for sure different, and the trailer does not capture it at all, which is why it's one of the worst trailers of 2015.
Right. So if you're confused of what this movie is about, the film's protagonists are pretty much made of like traitors.
Traitor!
Wow, that's gonna be a great. It's gonna be a great post production. It's made of traders, people who used to trade, fund managers, bankers.
Just money people.
Yeah, and all the actors are. It is a pretty star-studded cast of Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling, and Brad Pitt. And what the plot essentially is that they predict and profit off of the collapse of the economy in 2008, and they're essentially betting against the booming economy or shorting the booming economy
in a big way.
It is.
See what I did there?
I did. But what I want to talk about first is sorry, just keep going on and on.
No, you're good.
But
I got nothing.
oh, okay, yeah. Let me lead us into a little conversation that I want to start first. Is the screenplay? I think the screenplay does this film a lot of favors. McKay is working off of Michael Lewis' book. I think you can see on the poster as we're walking in, Lewis has wrote, I don't think the screenplays, but the books for like Moneyball and The Blind Side. Okay. And there were a lot of segments in there, and I read about this before, but there were a lot of segments in there that in the film that almost took directly from This American Life had like an episode. They've played it like a fucking 1,000 times. It won like a Peabody Award. I think it was called The Giant Pool of Money. So there's, again, it's not exactly an original idea, but it definitely has a lot of like source material in this movie. I don't know. I just thought the screenplay was pretty well done.
No, yeah, and I think watching the trailer, I thought, all right, well, we've already done this on Wolf of Wall Street, like, rich people making more money and laughing at everyone else while they make more money, and that's like absolutely not what the movie is.
It's a very different movie.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a pretty dark movie at its core, which I came away with most, is how dark it actually is, and there is definitely a lot of comedy in it, but it's almost like the comedy is there to be like, don't get too sad while you watch this movie, because we're talking about some like really serious shit.
Right, yeah.
That's my thought.
And I remember we, again, because we came up with this, to see this movie, just because we couldn't find like a great 70mm showing of The Hateful Eight, so we ended up just deciding to see this. And I remember Kevin was like, all right, like I'm gonna be on the podcast, but like let me at least see the trailer first. And your reaction was, I mean, what? Yeah, let's talk about the trailer, because the trailer is, again, it's a terrible trailer for a pretty great movie.
Yeah,
I hadn't even heard of this movie, and movies like this usually pass under my radar because I'm kind of horrible with movies. I like Marvel movies. Anyway, moving on. So I was like, let me check out the trailer and see if this is my cup of tea. And it was so bad. I was like, yes, I'm in. This is going to be horrible.
Right, so you could trash it.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
yeah.
I was hoping. I mean, I knew that it wasn't going to be bad, but I was hoping I could like pick it apart.
Well, yeah, it's one of those trailers where you watch and you're like, how could this possibly be a good movie? Like everything we're watching in this trailer is awful, but then it's got like a 91 on Rotten
very
Tomatoes.
favorable
like,
ratings.
Yeah, great reviews across the board. So I was really curious going into this movie, like how are
Right.
they going to salvage something from what I saw in the trailer to something good?
It has like a 90s style like commentator like right off the bat. Did
Well,
you
yeah,
guys
that's the
watch
one
that
thing
trailer?
that's not expressed in the trailer is that there is a narrator, and then it breaks the fourth wall a lot. Like,
Right.
That's probably one of like the most unique things about the film is how often either Ryan Gosling as the narrator looks towards the camera to say something, or there's a few parts where they're trying to explain like housing concepts and mortgage concepts and whatnot, and he'll say, all right, well, here's Margot Robbie in a bath to explain this like boring like finance concept.
That's
Right.
probably my favorite part.
Which is bold, but it fucking works. Like
Right, no, definitely, yeah.
because it's if you think about like if they hadn't done stuff like that, this is a really boring movie without like that comedy and without stuff like that. And you start to understand why the trailer looks so light and comedic is because they have to do that. Otherwise, it's just a boring movie about people looking at numbers on a screen and saying, "Oh, this looks weird. Let's bet against it." You know.
Right, and the whole thing with the fucking trailer is it's exactly like that whole like I think films and production studios make the most money off of like boys between the ages of like 15 and like 21 or something. So like they're gonna make every movie try to look like The Hangover, but like banks and stuff. I don't know. Come watch it. Like you know, like
I think it was definitely trying to feed off like the Wolf of Wall Street thing.
Definitely,
like,
yeah.
Oh, these are like corrupt people. They're making a lot of money. They're with strippers and they're like doing coke and whatnot. And like there's really like not a lot of that in the movie. And the stuff that's in the trailer is like out of context in the trailer. Like, oh, naked girls from this like one random scene where they're actually doing like research on like the housing market,
Right,
as
yeah.
opposed to just being at like a strip club.
Right. So let's talk about the characters though. So I mean, essentially the MC of this movie is like Ryan Gosling, and I like him because they use him like essentially as a plot device to address the camera. I mean, everyone sort of addresses the camera, but like to set up introductions for the characters or provide some sort of historical context with everything. And again, wandering back to the screenplay, I don't think this film would have made sense again if they didn't do like those like weird celebrity analogies.
No, yeah, because it's confusing stuff. Like
Yeah.
we don't, and they have a line about that where like the banks, they come up with these terms for financing concepts like purposely that we're not supposed to understand. So they literally have to like lay everything out for us.
So they don't feel
In a
like other
humorous
people
way,
can do
yeah.
their jobs here.
Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that, like, in watching the trailer, I was really worried that the entire movie was going to be like, oh, big banks, oh, the big bank is the worst, and not actually, like, going into detail with everything, which this movie did a great job
go
of actually being,
pretty
like,
deep into detail, which is
yeah,
great.
it's, like, educational.
I
almost.
definitely came out understanding almost everything in the movie. Like, like it was definitely, I don't know.
It was almost like to the point of it being like preachy and like having like an agenda of,
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
here's how much the big banks suck and stuff like that. And,
Definitely.
like a Bernie Sanders like campaign ad.
But like back to the characters. Hold on, I have a list right here. So we have Ryan Gosling, who's kind of like the smooth guy, and then there's like Christian Bale, who's like the tortured genius, and he's weird. Like I'm making this sound like really dumb.
It's better than that.
And of course Steve Carell, who I'll get to in a minute. I feel like he deserves his own kind of section. But there's also the two other protagonists. I have their names. The Finn Wittrock and John Magaro. I'm not sure if them.
If you watch, like the IMDb description says there's 4 outsiders, and if you watch the poster, like Brad Pitt is who they consider to be the 4th one, even though he's kind of just like a minor role compared to those other 2 characters, which is weird. I mean, marketing wise, I understand.
He
it,
is.
but-
He was a producer. So.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Put me on the poster.
So Brad Pitt is essentially bearded and glasses Brad Pitt. is essentially those two guys that I just said, the Witchrock and Megaro. Like he's like their ex-mentor, kind of, or a just neighbor who's giving some friendly
He's a neighbor
advice.
who used to work on Wall Street, he says, and then he got out because he realized how corrupt it is. And now he kind of like sees corruption everywhere, like even in like the food market and like stuff like that. So,
but he's essentially a device to get them, to the big boys table where they throw around real money, kind of thing.
with his connection and whatnot. I think he has probably the best line and like the most insightful line of the movie is like, for the entire like first half of the movie, I think it literally happens like halfway through the movie. The entire first half is just them like being excited about, realizing this housing bubble where these bad mortgages that have been, repackaged into CDOs, I think they call them, and whatnot.
Right.
And that basically if you bet against them because they know that the housing market is going to fail, if you make these bets on the insurance against these things, that you're going to make a lot of money, like 20-1 like return and whatnot.
Right.
So the entire first half of the movie is just everyone talking about how much money they're going to make and how it's like a great investment. And then these two young guys, I cannot even remember the actors' names. They're pretty much unknown at this point. They were great though.
They were really
but they make like a big deal to buy these shorts, is what they call them, these insurance on betting against the housing market.
Right.
They make a big deal with that, and they're like dancing in like this like Vegas casino, and Brad Pitt is like, fucking stop dancing. Like literally for every 1% of unemployment rate, like 40,000 people die. You realize that, right? Like, and it's like kind of like a sobering moment in the movie where it's kind of been like this big party of like, oh, we can make much more money doing these things, and then like the movie just kind of comes to a halt, and it's like, hey, there are real lives at stake, and like that's when the movie, I think, starts to get like dark from there on out.
Definitely.
Like, oh, that's what the movie is really about, is how greedy everyone was on Wall Street, and these Big Short people included, the people that were betting against Wall Street.
And that was probably my like favorite part of the movie, in all honesty, because that's like how I was feeling the entire time. So to actually have a character like,
he's kind of like the Greek chorus, like just
Yeah.
voicing like what the actual opinion of real people is.
because
Is
we
that,
all know
like,
how it's gonna end.
you guys are making money, yeah, that's cool.
Right.
And he even says that, he's like, it's great, but like don't fucking dance about it, like,
Right.
Because
Just
people
don't
are
fucking
going
dance,
to
right.
die
Yeah.
for like the money that we're making.
And they did. I liked Brad Pitt's role. I mean, obviously they throw him on like a poster or whatever because he sells tickets. But I almost knew he wasn't going to be like a major part of the plot. But I also was glad that he wasn't like 10 years a slave, or was it 10 years?
12 years.
12. Jeez, I forgot about those 2 years. It was hard out there. Lost track of the time. Wow. Dove in some real weird racist shit.
Just like that movie did.
But what's it called?
A white man saved the day in that movie. So.
No, but that's literally what Kevin said before. Like, he's somebody who read a script and was like, yeah, I like this. Like, I'll throw some money. I'll play a role. I'll play the white guy who comes in at the end and is like, I don't.
Racism is wrong.
I don't see color. I'm gonna run back to town and unwrinkle this entire plot. Like, like it's just kind of like that movie is a whole nother discussion. And I just kind of thought he was gonna have like an eye rolling part, but he was actually that was like a very important role. It was somebody.
It was important and it was interesting, but
he
it was
provided
also
gravity for like even the youngest of like, oh wow, like we just got into this game. It's not like this more seasoned people. It's like these people, like these kids who just came in. They don't really know how hard it is and everything. Yeah. And even though he is kind of crazy and they poke fun at that a lot, like he's there to provide the gravity of the situation.
Oh yeah. And it's like an important role. It's an interesting role, but I think it was kind of like a walk in the park for Brad Pitt. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
Not that he was bad, but it's just like it was such an easy role for him that you were kind of just like, okay, like Brad Pitt took that role because he's a producer and he's just gonna say a bunch of lines. Not bad at all, but it's just there's more interesting roles in this movie.
There are some parts where I like thought was this like Adam McKay just kind of like calling up like actor friends and being like, hey, like you want to like film this part real quick? Like at first, like I just thought like Marissa Tomei was just like, yeah, sure, I'll hop in the studio for like 2 days, like because she was just like on the other side of the phone of Steve Carell, kind of.
Yeah.
Is that who that was?
Marissa Tomei. Yeah.
Yeah. But it really does come together. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to spoil too many things, but it does come together, and you do see her like interact in person with Steve Carell and everything, And you are
she plays a pretty important part as far as the plot goes. They kind of set that up early when they're explaining Steve Carell's character, Mark Baum, I think his name is that he's experienced a tragedy, which is, I think it's a great, compliment to the screenwriting. It's just that, he has this tragedy of his brother committed suicide literally by jumping off a building, which was something that I think literally like Wall Street executives did, like when the thing crashed. It's kind of like, foreshadowing. But yeah, like it has to deal with his brother, who he basically he wasn't able to reach out to his brother. I think he expresses at one point in that conversation with Marissa Tomei,
right? And
like just how Steve Carell's brother is just, it's like this thing in the back of the movie the entire time, how Steve Carell won't talk about it. They keep bringing that up, like he keeps pushing it away every time he tries to talk about it. And then the climax of the movie is basically him realizing how shitty like everything is in the world, right? And that's when he's finally able to like talk about his brother and what happened with that.
We never see his brother hit the ground though. Very disappointing.
But let's talk about Steve Carell, because he definitely has. I mean, everybody has a pretty interesting role. Not everybody, but it's Steve Carell especially. I think, and I have this. And I'm sure you do too, Mike, this incredible bias surrounding Steve Carell, because he's Michael Scott, from The Office.
Just towards like comedic actors that are trying to like take a dramatic role,
right? But he's just like arguably one of the best comedic actors that has ever been on television.
Yeah,
that's in my
generation, one of the most recognizable comedic sitcom actors.
Definitely. But like post Office, I feel like he keeps doing these accents. Like he did the Foxcatcher, I think that was last year, and like it was like when it was in festivals, like I think people were like, this is gonna go to the Oscars, and then like it kind of really flopped. Like,
although he got nominated for the Oscars.
Did he?
Maybe, yeah.
He did. So. All right, never mind. Well, still, I mean, I think people thought he was going to win like Best Actor or something. Like that was his role.
But I think that's more of the comedic actor, like Jonah Hill getting nominated for Moneyball. Like, not that he did bad, but it seems more dramatic when it's a comedic actor in a dramatic role, because you're like, whoa, I had no idea they knew how to like act in anything besides comedy. As if like if you do one comedy movie, you can only do that for like the rest of your life.
And circling back to the trailer, I mean, I wrote this down. There's like some other movie coming out this year. It's called like Freeheld or something. I don't really know the entire premise. It's some sort of movie about lesbians getting married or something.
Whoa, lesbians!
I'm tuned in now.
But in it, he plays again. It's
back
like,
to the lesbians.
It's almost like it's like this same exact, very pronounced like New York City accent.
Kevin's about to say something.
Joe, do they kiss in the movie?
I don't know.
Is there tongue?
I don't know. I didn't watch it, Kevin.
Oh, why didn't we go see that movie?
I don't know.
Kevin. Time and place. Time and place.
I'll save it for the dinner table.
Kevin, I have a link of GIFs from the movie that I can send to you. But
as long as they're no more than 5 seconds. That's how long.
But in Freeheld, I feel like he's doing the same exact character as this, which again is another thing. Like the plot, like I mean the trailer kind of like was like, ooh, and it's like I think he's just like gay, and he's like, I'm gay and from New York, like, and then this one he's like, I'm from New York, like kind of like thing.
New York Jew, yeah.
And it really worked out in this movie.
It really jerked off all over the place.
I really liked his performance, but I kind of missed the days where he didn't have to like put on some crazy accent to like, be like I want to win an Oscar in my lifetime. Like, like I miss like his performance of like Little Miss Sunshine. Like,
or like Dan in Real Life, like movies that he did like right after like leaving the office.
Those are like great. Like I didn't need any accent to be like, I don't know. It just seems like he feels like he needs to like do some sort of like method acting or something.
Yeah.
And again, not that it hurt this movie, but it's just like sometimes it's a weird choice.
Well, yeah, I mean the parts where he has like emotions in this movie are fucking great. Like he is great at like portraying emotion. It's just like some of these accents are like they're not his forte has ever been, like accents and like characters really. He's good at playing humans and like human emotion and stuff like that. He's fucking great at that. But when there's a few times where his accent just gets too weird and you're like, I can't I can't buy into this not being Michael Scott and Steve Carell.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to like someone like Christian Bale, who is like, what, he's Australian, and like the entire time you buy into his accent
yeah.
because he's a master of accents as well as acting. Whereas Steve Carell, he hasn't mastered like doing these different accents.
Yeah.
Although I did like him in Foxcatcher, but this was, I think, the first one where I was like, all right, maybe, yeah, like you said, go back to just
Right.
doing a regular accent. And
Does Foxcatcher also have lesbians?
It does not.
it does not. It's a lot of boys.
Never gonna see it.
But
It's boys wrestling.
Steve,
Oh, never mind.
Back in.
who's in that?
Channing Tatum.
Yeah, Channing
Mark
Tatum.
Ruffalo.
Hello.
It's a great movie if you guys haven't seen it yet.
I haven't
It's
seen
good.
it. Anyway, Steve Carell's character is very important to this movie because he is like this wavering moral center of the story. And because like on one hand, and this is with every character, but like especially with Steve Carell, like daddy gonna be rich. But like on the other hand, he's definitely, I think, the character besides Brad Pitt who most struggles with just how much corruption there is in the entire system. And you can just like visibly see that in his performance. He always looks like he's like crawling in his skin.
So
kind of.
he's like a hedge fund or a whatever fund, I don't know, Wall Street.
Yeah, he's managing a hedge fund.
He's a fund manager, and they have him like sending all his employees to go like look into like the housing market and see if like what these other people have told him is real about the housing market, you know, inevitable collapse and whatnot. And like, you know, partially you think like, oh, he's just looking into it because he wants to make money, but I think it becomes more apparent towards the end of the movie that he's looking into it because he's curious about how fucked up is like the financial system in Wall Street and the banks, like,
Right.
and especially towards the end where, you know, there's parts where he like, you know, kind of plays against himself with the things that he says, like at the Vegas conference, someone's talking,
Right, exactly,
and he
yeah.
like jumps out and says like, oh, is it like a probability or a possibility that blah blah blah, something at 5% numbers, Wall Street stuff, blah blah blah.
All right.
But yeah, he speaks out when it doesn't actively benefit him because he's more curious about, you know, how corrupt is this system as opposed to how much money can I make, like the other 4 or 3 characters
Right.
in this movie.
No. Thanks, Jordan.
It's Jordan.
I don't know. Who's Nick?
Who are any of us?
Yeah, so,
I think it was... Yo, go on.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the characters, and that's one thing. Like, I don't know why it's basically been a thing since like The Social Network came out. I want to say where we have these like character-driven biopic picks, and I really like The Social Network because like Jesse Eisenberg was kind of unknown at the time. It was a lot of unknown people, but now these biopic picks are what are popular now. So you have all these famous actors playing these character roles, and for me that sometimes breaks the immersion for me in a lot of these movies. But this one did a great job. Christian Bale had some very realistic neck fat. It was waddling.
He
and
did,
jiggling all
yeah.
about.
Yeah. It was a weird... Yeah.
Yeah, Christian Bale was actually awesome. He was probably my favorite actor in the movie. Not my favorite character. Not my favorite part of the movie, but he just did a great
No, he's
job.
he's almost always good just because he's like a master of doing
Yeah.
different accents. Like
I
you
know-
forget that he is he Australian or is he English? But he's not
don't
not
know.
American.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
but he does accents and
It's
like
fucking
different like
distracting.
oh good.
But I was afraid that I was going to come into this and be like, oh, it's Brad Pitt, you know, it's Steve Carell, and kind of suck me out of the movie. But everyone did a great job of pulling me into the movie, especially Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling was probably my favorite part. It was
Minus his
great.
hair.
Yeah, can we talk about how fucking terrible Ryan Gosling's hair is? It's like a...
He has like a Jerry curl at one
He
point.
I don't know if it's just because he's too recognizable as this point, like,
No, he's...
or is it just bad makeup? Like,
If-
can you just
it
not
was-
make a blonde guy look like he has black hair?
I feel like if he was some extra, like I would have been like, what the fuck? Like, you know, like he just had like this like almost like rubber, like plastic looking.
It's
like,
also like, I mean, Steve
like-
Carell was sort of the same thing,
Right.
and I was just
Everybody
like,
had wigs on.
Steve Carell has dark hair. They give him light hair for this movie. Ryan Gosling has light hair. They give him dark hair for
Yeah,
this movie.
and for movies like this, I kind of just why do they need to do that? You know, why
We didn't know what the real person looks
Yeah,
like.
exactly.
Like if Ryan Gosling was blonde, no one would care, and we probably would have been less distracted
like in
by his horrible
in,
way.
I think there was just not great costume design, kind of. I also
they
like
did a great
Well,
job
but I mean,
of
I think-
making everyone look like they
But
were
that
from 2006.
really
which
because
really enjoyed.
I didn't.
I said
didn't
this in
see
the
that
car. I
as
wasn't
much.
sure if they were trying to make them intentionally look like dumb as shit, or if it was just like bad makeup. And I think
Yeah.
part of it might be like this opinion that people have of like Wall Street executives, and they portray it pretty well in the movie. Just that like they're shitheads. Like
Yeah.
they're not
Right.
smart people. They're not exciting or interesting people. They're
Yeah.
just all they care about is money,
Right.
and what they're wearing and their business cards and whatnot and shit like that. And I think that might have been part of that character is just he looks like shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
It would be great if it ends up the character in real life like wears different wigs all the time.
But Christian Bale, I feel like he had the most noticeable wig, and then he also
Really?
has
Over Ryan Gosling?
yes. I think so, and you can see it in the trailer, especially, and then also, I guess maybe the character it's based off of had like a mole along the side of his like left eye socket, kind of. And like that bugged me the entire time because it just looked like a brown piece of clay that they just kind of like squashed into his eye.
I thought it looked pretty
And
realistic.
Like when he was like sweating and it was like on the drum set or whatever, and it zoomed up on his face, like everything was sweating except the mole. Obviously, like it just bothered me the entire time.
I believed it, except for the fact that I know that Christian Bale doesn't have that on his face, and that's
Right,
kind of where the
exactly.
star power comes into play.
Yeah.
Where maybe the movie would have benefited more from having some more lesser known people instead of like everyone in a main role. Even if you don't know their name, you've seen them in a movie before, and you know what they look like and whatnot. And
Right.
when you do some extreme like cosmetic stuff like that, it starts to take away from the movie a little bit. I think
Yeah.
it pulls you out of the immersion factor.
Right. And before we do whatever, I mean, we can go on however long, but I think I want to. One of the. I mean, as we're walking out of theaters, I felt like one of the scenes that I was most compelled to talk about as we were exiting is when they go to Central Florida.
Yeah.
And because, like, up until, like, that point, everything in the economy. Everything with the economy, like, you keep hearing about how bad it is, kind of, but it's not, like, sensationalized yet. And then, like, when we get to Central Florida, like, you see, like, the for sale signs, and you see the like, construction, like, equipment in the construction just, like, just, like, stopped in, like,
Yeah, and they
standstill.
literally break into someone's house at one point and they look at the mortgage bill, and
Right.
whoever owned that house like just circled the bill and said sorry and left
Right,
everything
yeah.
there. Like, I just can't pay this right now.
Right.
Oh, Florida, the armpit of America.
And then, like, I feel like one of the most memorable lines is when they're talking to that guy from New Girl, Max something, Schmidt and like the other guy. And again, I feel like they had modern haircuts. Like I don't know, whatever. I just felt like they didn't age this properly almost. But anyway, that's not the point. Steve,
Ryan Gosling didn't have a modern.
Oh, right. No, exactly. But Steve Carell was like, he's talking to them or whatever, and he brings his employers, his associates. I don't want to call them assistants because they weren't assistants really. Into like a room. He says, "Can we have a word real quick?" And he's like, "What's going on here? Like, are they confessing?" And then
Why are they confessing?
And then
the guy
they
says
say,
they're
like,
bragging.
Yeah, they're not confessing, they're bragging. And like I thought that was like a really like I don't know, I felt like that changed like on top of like everything, obviously like the visuals and the sensationalization of Florida or whatever matched with like that line was like that kind of changed the movie for me.
No, and I think that's also part of like the turning point of the movie is where the first half before that like Brad Pitt line and what
Right.
Steve Carell says is about like, let's make money. How much money can we make? These are good odds, like 20-1 return, whatnot. And then as they start digging into this more to check up on their investment, they're realizing like how corrupt the entire mortgage and like loan system is. And like I think Steve Carell's character is a good like vessel for that, and how much he sees in that Totally losing my train of thought right now.
Sorry,
Crown Royal's going way to the head.
Are there
I don't know why
lesbians in those thoughts, Mike?
I don't know why I apologize to Mike. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Mike.
You're losing your train of thought.
I blame you.
Oh God, yeah.
There's gonna
No,
be
but
some
from
sort of
that halfway
tonight.
point is where the movie just starts to get like more dark, and they start realizing like I don't want to go into like the specifics of it because the movie explains it better than I could, and even after seeing the movie, I don't know if I fully understand it as well. But like, it's supposed to be this basically sure investment because they've looked at the numbers that no one else has really looked at, that the housing market is going to crash, and they've bought these shorts, which are basically insurance on whether the house market will crash, and they know it's going to crash, so they're looking for this great return. Then they see the housing market crash and the bubble bursts, and they're not getting any return.
Right.
And that's when they realize, oh, like the banks are literally like lying about like these.
Which I wish they had gone into more, because that's the federal government stepping in and ensuring their investment.
Oh yeah.
Which is
the
regulators and the credit.
And that's when you start to realize just how like fucked up the whole system is. Like it was fucked up before that, when it was just them, repackaging bad loans into these CDOs, and then what do they call it? Synthetic CDOs of synthetic COs, blah blah blah. This whole like Venn diagram of like
Which is
fucked
just
up
how
shit. Yeah.
And
the economy works.
But then it gets even worse because they literally like lie about returns and stuff like that, because they know they can't afford to pay out on all these shorts that people were buying out. And
it's based off of true events, and like you almost couldn't fit it into like a 3-act story, because like when I was watching, there is a point where you go, geez, like how long is this? Or like, geez, like the third act started like a while ago.
Yeah.
And they kind of throw you through a loop to actually like put you through like that fucking, you're kind of on like edge for a while, because you're like, when are they going to make their
because, I
money?
mean, literally from the beginning of the movie,
Right.
they're talking about the housing market's going to crash. The housing
Any
market's
day
going
now.
to crash.
Right, yeah. Mhm.
And then it doesn't happen until like almost towards the very end of the movie. And then then you see like how bad the housing market crash like actually was.
Can I say one thing though?
Go
Like,
for it.
The
No.
return on those investments weren't that great.
No, yeah, and I think
It's
that's
just
well, that speaks to the fraudulence of the banks, is because if they had honored the original agreements and whatnot, because they were supposed to, the everyone who invested in these shorts keeps calling the banks and being like, I forget what the terminology they use is, but they're basically asking like, what is the rate now? Like they're asking, how much am I going to make back, or there's a P word for a position or blah 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 for that.
Right.
And the banks keep saying, oh, there's no change, even though they're watching on the news that the housing market has completely crashed at that point, and that what everything they predicted for these investments has come true, and the banks just keep lying. And I think that speaks to that, is that they should have made like 20-1 on what was like 200 billion, whatever they invested, and they end up making like 30 cents on the dollar pretty much from what they invested.
And again, like I thought like the two kids would make more kind of than what did they make, like 90 million or something?
Yeah, 80 million.
Yeah,
their
right.
30
million, yeah.
investment.
Right. So
And that's one thing in this movie, like if you don't really know how the market works, there's a lot of numbers thrown around in this movie, and you'll be like, oh, they just threw down like 200 million, but they only have 30 million. How does that work? It's like when you buy a house, you put 10,000 down on a $200,000 house, and then you're in debt. So they were in debt on their investment,
right.
and then just having to pay their premiums. Which that's when I was like thinking of the investments that they made, though they were paying like $2 million premiums, and then they went on for like 2 or 3 years, and then they would.
Oh yeah, we have to wire a 70 million like premium. I think someone says at one point.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. Man, so do you want to?
It's just bad trading.
You want to show how many fingers, or do you want to?
I don't want to start, but yeah, we should start showing.
Because I still have some points written down that I want to that I want to touch, that I've kind of been saving for the end, just because I know it's gonna coincide with my final rating.
Okay.
I guess I'm gonna start.
Do you, boo?
All right. So let me. So I think the genius of this film is, and it's funny because we said that as we were in the car, we're talking about Brad Pitt, and I said like all that's missing from this movie is like George Clooney. And I think like the genius of this film is that it's not Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
And like the audience was sort of like on the, as an audience, we always want to be on the winning side of the story kind of thing. and we are like, these guys are walking away with God knows how much money altogether, like they walked away with. But I think like to reach, it had the appeal of Ocean's 11, but like I think the real genius is that it had the appeal of Ocean's 11 because we're cheering for these guys, but the film in itself it's a fucking paradox.
Oh yeah.
It's like these guys on the screen won, but everyone in the audience, like our parents,
Yep.
like everyone we know, lost.
Yeah.
And it's just like the title cards following the movie hope, and like I guess the entire film in itself. Like maybe this will be a wake up call, kind of, because it's like because they had that kind of like red herring where it's like, and then we like jailed all these bankers. Like, no,
Just kidding. Yeah.
yeah, we just
We went
like,
back to the exact same system.
right, exactly. And
So it'll be good for another 70 years.
right, and like again, like I said, this is not an original story. Everybody and their mother has kind of done this story.
You ever heard about the Great Depression?
But it's like NPR did like a story on this, and like a ton of other people did. Like there's a ton of source material that's coming into this. I was meaning to talk about, in fucking 2005, Inside Job. I don't know if you guys have seen that documentary, but it won like best documentary at the Oscars, and it was about this, and it's like that didn't wake up anybody, kind of thing, and no one really cared, but like now we have like the star-studded cast, and I feel like most people will be like, oh wow, like kind of like wake up, just because like it is like a movie that you follow, and you're like, I can't believe this is real, kind of like thing. And
Yeah, and they say that a lot, where like Ryan Gosling will be like, "Oh yeah, like this
Right.
actually happened." By the way, now back to the story.
right, and I'm hoping that again, nobody watched the documentary. The NPR story won like a Peabody Award. That just didn't reach the audience, and I feel like maybe Adam McKay felt like he could do like some sort of good, like shifting away from like the Will Ferrell, and make a movie that's still funny, that has a wide audience, that maybe changes like a few opinions out there, and God forbid history won't repeat itself, and much like the ending of the movie, maybe we will, like the general public will become aware, and we will start to change a few things.
Bernie.
Anyway, those were just my thoughts, and I felt that a lot during the movie. I know that doesn't coincide a lot with the rating I'm about to give it, but I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 fingers. And that is my rating. And yeah, just because I feel like it was a good message. Completely different movie than we're used to seeing. I hope it's up for Best Picture, because I think it is one of the better movies that I've seen.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've been talking for a while. Kevin, if you want to go next, or Mike, if you want to go.
I'll go next. So this isn't really my type of movie. I'll just put it out there.
Right.
So I did really like it though. It was really enjoyable.
And you went in blind.
Yeah,
you went in not
blind.
expecting to like it.
Yeah.
You went in seeing the horrible trailer.
Yeah.
Worse than blind.
But yeah, it did a lot of really cool, like original breaking the fourth wall type of stuff that I really liked, and I really liked that it was actually educational. Like I was worried that it was going to use all this like sensationalized rhetoric and like really dumb down, the tragedy that our country went through, which
Right.
I honestly think it could have like gone into it a little bit more. I really liked that like all the scenes that were cut in between like news footage and like popular images from pop culture to show like the passage of time and also like kind of what America was going through at the time. I don't know. I'll probably give it 3.5 fingers.
3.5.
All right.
I would say we've joked a lot about how horrible the trailer is, but I think after you come out of the movie and after you realize what the movie is really about, the trailer starts to seem more brilliant, and that I think the movie is really about kind of like this message, like it almost is, like a Bernie Sanders like campaign ad, like
Right.
about how horrible the big banks are and how we bailed them out and we did not like break them up. We have not really done anything to fix this horrible problem that this movie is talking about. And then the trailer kind of just takes all the funny parts to be like, all right, let's get as many like young kids and like, you know, real people that wouldn't care or wouldn't give a shit about like the housing market collapse and get them to watch this movie because it looks like a heist movie. It looks like, oh, how much money can we make off the housing market?
Right.
And it is that for like the first half of it, but then it just starts to get dark and it starts to become about the real problems of Wall Street and finance and the housing market. And I think that's kind of the brilliance of the movie. And it could have easily been a really dumb, boring movie with just a bunch of people staring at screens being like, oh, the housing market's going down a little bit, we should bet against it and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
But they do these brilliant like fourth wall breaks. They do Ryan Gosling's narration is great. They do a lot of weird editing things that that were off-putting in the beginning of the movie, but towards the end of it they start to seem more brilliant. Just the way they'll cut scenes off like before someone's even finished saying a word in a sentence, like not even before the sentence is over, but before, in the middle of a word, they'll cut to another scene, and then they'll flash like a bunch of images to, you know, express like, all right, here's 2006 or here's 2007 or whatnot. And like, you know, there's even times where they're playing like snippets of songs, like
that was
they
one
played
of the things I really loved. The soundtrack was really
they
good
played
in
like
this
a Run the
movie.
Jewels song, but it's just the lyrics from one of the Run the Jewels songs. They do a lot of stuff like that to kind of keep you off guard, but also keep you like interested in stuff like that. It kind of shows like how all over the place the movie is, but like in a cool, like artistic way. And I think if the movie didn't have such a good message, I would probably hate that. But I think it shows to me that the movie is really about this message that they're trying to get across. And it's preachy, but it's also important in a good way. And I think everything in the movie is trying to really, like, it's almost like a movie that was made with a purpose to actually show people what's wrong with the housing market.
Right.
As opposed to how can we entertain people. It's more entertainment for the purpose of education. And I think I respect that, and I did feel entertained the entire way, all the way through anyway, as much as the trailer was horrible. So I never thought I would give it this, but I'll give it 4 fingers out of 5, which is a pretty good rating.
You know what?
Based on that trailer.
I'm going to change my score.
Oh, I just
Oh my
converted
God,
Kevin.
this has never happened.
God,
again.
that monologue
All right.
changed your mind.
Full fist. Off 5. No, because really, I really liked how educational it was. Just like thinking about it now, like, and that like the general public, it's made for the general public, and
Because they need this, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I really do. Like, people need to know.
People need fucking Brad Pitt, and you know, Brad Pitt, like, you know, he's hunky, and and Christian Bale and Steve Carell. He's so funny, and he's, you know, he speaks to this generation through like comedy and television and everything else. They need those people to talk to them, to tell them, like, that's why they have like Sarah McLachlan on, like, oh, save these fucking animals, like, you know, like that's what we need, like, it's like to tell people.
Well, yeah, and they go to the extreme, like literally like Margot Robbie in a bathtub,
Exactly.
like hot girl naked underneath those bubbles, and she's telling you about the housing market. And then what do they have? Anthony Bourdain, like cooking like stuff. Selena Gomez,
Selena Gomez,
and a behavioral scientist. I forgot his name. He's supposed to be someone important.
Some
like,
nerd.
So what are you actually going to change your score to?
I would say 5 fingers.
wow.
I was.
I made Kevin change his score from a 3.5 to a 5.
Yeah. No, I was like knocking on a little bit because I was like, it's because the reason that I gave it 3.5 is because it's a character-based biopic pick, and I'm kind of sick of these movies. It's just not my type of film. But putting that aside, it was a solid movie.
So that comes out to. So it's, I did 4.5. You did 4. Oh no. Okay, we both did 4.
4, 4, and 5, which
Okay.
comes
So
out to
4.4.
4.3 repeating. We round down, so that's going to give a final score of 4 fingers for The Big Short.
That's a little short, don't you think?
Is that math right? Yeah, no, yeah.
I hope so.
But one thing that you said again before the cutting of this film is unlike anything I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, literally
The only
in the
word
first
I
like
can-
5
yeah.
minutes, I hated it. I was
Exactly.
like,
Yeah, same.
and coming from my reaction to the trailer, I was like, all right, I know I'm not going to
Yes,
like this
exactly.
movie. by like 15, 20 minutes in, I'm like sold on the cutting, like, and how.
The only way I could describe it is that it's emotionally cut. Like
Yes.
it's like kind of like fucking like swinging it around because you're angry or you're sad.
It's a lot
yeah.
of like purposefully hard cuts. Like even
Yes.
they'll go from like having a soundtrack in a scene, and then halfway through the scene, the soundtrack just like cuts out. And
cuts
it's
out
just,
at a word, like you know
Yeah.
that all right, so that leaves 4 out of 5 fingers for The Big Short, directed by Adam McKay. I think this is a step in the right direction. I hope Adam McKay keeps doing shit like this.
I
instead
would
of...
be very happy if he got nominated for a directing
Oh, definitely.
Oscar for
That would
this.
be
That would
awesome.
be cool.
I mean, like I think him and somebody else co-wrote this script. I think a shit ton of work. I think a shit ton of work went into the script because you really had to dumb down a bunch of like very complex terms.
Yeah.
For the general
In an
American
entertaining way, too.
yeah, for the general American public, in a way that entices them. So is that right? Entice? Whatever. It doesn't matter now.
Works for me.
Podcast is almost over.
I've been drinking
Fuck
Crown
it,
Royal and Coke the whole time.
I threw a few beers in there too. So
Let's get a last plug for Kevin.
oh yeah, Kevin,
Do you have like
tell
a
us
link,
about your
a link we can send people to for your podcast?
Who the fuck is Kevin?
We'll Kevin has forgot his name. We'll throw a link in the description.
Yeah, if you want to check it out right now, it's routed through an old creative thing that we tried to do called The Game Squad, DAGAME Squad.
.com
and
or
there's a Facebook page, there's a YouTube page, so you can just search that. I'll have them up on SoundCloud and Podomatic and iTunes probably next month, so look out for that.
You gotta get out there. You gotta promote your podcast. It's working terrible for us.
you got to do all the things that we're doing right and that have not having any right consequences.
That has like
I've been going on expensive blimp rides across the city throwing out papers.
oh boy.
Kevin, you're our only fan of this podcast.
Yeah, Kevin, you're like the only person on Facebook who shares like we had to get you in here.
Yeah.
Who actually like promotes our shit.
Talk about breaking the fourth wall, huh?
But we do whether I don't care if it's over Skype. I want to get you and your brother in a podcast.
Yeah, let's plug the next episode that I'll be on because you guys should get pumped about that. We're going to be talking all things handsome boy Max Landis has done, most likely.
Because you're...
Hi, Max, if you're listening. My name is Mike King. My email is mikemefe@gmail.com. Just send me some ideas. We'll work on it. Maybe a Star Wars.
Because here's kind of a preview. Like, Kevin's brother personally knows Max Landis.
Yeah.
So
we met him through the Comic-Con scene because my brother was a big cosplayer. And just kind of met him like randomly at Comic-Con, and they became friends because my brother's a likable guy and Max Landis is a very unlikable guy, so of course they got along.
he's cute.
Max, if you're out there and you want any naked pictures of me, just ask my brother.
He's got him.
It's like a weird turn at the end.
That is a great note to go off on.
And on that note, if anyone wants naked pictures of Kevin, just ask Bill Pettijohn.
just contact my mother. She'll send him your way.
Signing off.
This has been How Many Fingers?
How Many Fingers, a podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Joe.
I'm naked. Kevin, put your pants on.
Well, Kevin, that's a big short.
Hey guys, Mike here. So, if you're listening to this episode on Thursday, January 14th, the Academy Award nominations were just announced this morning. And like I said last week, the Oscars are basically like the playoffs to us. So, we're recording a bonus episode tomorrow, Friday, January 15th, to give you guys our reactions to the nominations and maybe even some early predictions. We'll be releasing this episode sometime Friday night or early Saturday morning. So, if you're listening to this Saturday night or later, it's out. Go listen to it. Where, you ask? Oh, I'll tell you where, goddammit. You can find us on iTunes, the podcast app, and TuneIn if you search How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? You can follow us on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/HowManyFingersPodcast. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/HowManyFingersPodcast. You can tweet us on Twitter at HMFPodcast. And if you have suggestions for beers we should drink or synonyms for drunk that we should use, please let us know on there. And you can check out our official website at HowManyFingersPodcast.com and check out the links page on that website to find our YouTube link because we can't set a custom URL, so it's just a random splattering of alphanumeric characters. And don't forget, special Oscar nominations reaction episode this weekend, and then it's back to drunken movie reviews next week with Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight.